Hello and welcome back to another episode of Food Chain Wars. This is a show where we're basically sharing all the things that we're learning about ways to have success, tactics that get results when it comes to direct-to-consumer marketing for farm-to-fork brands, and ultimately that help you climb the value chain. My name is Brooks with Gracecart, joined as always with my brother and CEO of Seven Sons. The topic of this episode is going to be another revenue cheat codes series. It's going to fall right into that, where we're going to be talking about Blaine, a small handful of very simple things that people can do to increase their overall average order value. So if you're selling online, we're talking about what's the dollar amount that people spend with you with every single order. We're going to talk about a very few simple things that you can do to increase that number up. And Blaine, I wanted to start by leading into, okay, why, like how impactful is it when you can increase your average order value? So maybe I always like to kind of just give a breakdown of, I know we talk about a lot on this show, but for somebody new, like what are the overall different things in the grand scheme of direct marketing that you can do to increase your revenue at the end of the year? If someone's sitting down, we're coming close to the new year, maybe by the time this episode release, it'll be in January or so. So what are some things that people can do when it comes to 2023 increased revenue?
Well, I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed, but there are tons of strategies, tactics, and things you can do, but all of the things you can do fit into three buckets, Brooks. Ultimately, it boils down to, one, you can increase average order value, so how much is someone spending every time they buy from you. The second thing you can do, Brooks, is increase the frequency in which they place those orders. That will increase revenue. And the third and only thing you can really do is increase the number of customers you have buying from you. So those are really the only three things that you can do. And it's important, I think, to think about your business and look at where am I weak, where am I strong, and address the weak area, because that's generally going to be the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, it's always fun because like those kind of three things, they work together as math. Like if you increase one of those numbers by like 10% or so, it pretty much ends up being the same overall revenue. The big thing you need to figure out is, where are you the weakest? Because you need to decide what, if you focus on increasing your average order value, or if you focus on getting more customers, or if you want to focus on number of orders you get per year. That's what it was. Yeah. Which one of those do you see strategies inside of your business that you can have a high degree of confidence that you can actually move those numbers forward? So,
and two, I can just share real quick, Brooks. When I think about kind of the sequencing at Seven Sons, what we've focused on over the years, really, I feel like we did a lot for a long time to focus on average order value. And so we're going to talk about those things here today. But then I feel like we next went to, and really the last 16 months, Brooks, we've been really focused on frequency, how often a customer, which is what we've done with Subscribe and Save. So we've kind of tackled that. We think we've done a lot with our average order value. We don't expect that to go up a whole lot more. We don't think there's a whole lot of low-hanging fruit, but we did believe there was a lot of low-hanging fruit to get a customer to buy more often from us. And then Brooks, as we move into this year and kind of lately, we've also then have kind of turned to the idea that, well, we have a good, healthy average order value. We're definitely have increased the frequency. Now is probably a good time to start putting money into getting new customers come in. So I think there's actually a logical sequence to think about this.
Yeah, so that's the stage that we're in. So you need to think about what stage are you in? Are you in that kind of foundational stage? Because a lot of things we're going to talk about today, Blaine, for us, they've been foundational. We've been doing them for a very long time, but they're easy to forget about. And I think the biggest thing is it's really easy to overlook the impact that it can have on your business. Now, everyone wants to grow revenue. What can I do to grow revenue? And everyone's first thought is to turn to, well, I need more customers. That's how I grow revenue, right? Yep. And we end up spinning on this hamster wheel when you can actually make a huge progress towards your overall revenue, depending on the size of your business, by addressing some of these things here. So the first thing, well, actually what I wanted to actually do is kind of quantify, Blaine, if I thought this was fun. We're averaging Seven Sons around 2,800 orders a month right now. So I wanted to see, like, okay, what would it do? How would that impact our business if we, increase our average order value by $10? And what that would do is that would add $28,000 in revenue every single month. Mm-hmm. So you can start to see what kind of impact that this would have. So if there's, for like basically, I think, Blaine, where's our average order value at today? Close to 200?
It's a little above 200, a little north of that.
Yeah, so actually I have it written down here. So $210 is what our current average order value is. But I dug into some data, and this, for if you're a Gracecart client listening to this, you might enjoy hearing this. But the overall average order value for the entire platform,
so all the clients that are using Gracecart?
All the clients that are using Gracecart, that is $125. So you can see where that's decently lower than where it is for us. So I wanted to see, okay, what for, say if you're a business that's doing, into six figures, like $200,000, if you're able to close that gap from $125 to $210, that is going to add $136,000 in revenue, which is a 70% growth without adding a single new customer.
So that's taking your average order value from 125
to 210.
210. If you were what size business?
200,000 a year. If you're 200,000 a year. So you would grow by 70%, not add a single new customer if you're able to just close in that gap. So if you're listening to this right now, this is worth the time to go dig into your system, go to be able to.
And this is really easy to find out. You obviously just go into how many orders you have and see what the total revenue was.
Yeah, and it's easy. You can look at it, just look at your last 3 months. How many orders you get for the last 3 months, how much revenue did you get for the last 3 months, divide your revenue by your orders. That gives you the difference there. So this is worth taking the time, figure out what yours is. And if you see that you have a gap here between us at Seven Sons, and our business model might be different than yours.
Yeah, need to weigh that in.
Try to compare yourself. If you can get this type of information, this is where consulting is really helpful.
Yeah, if your business and product selection resembles Seven Sons, meaning you're selling frozen meat products, then there is a strong case you can get your average order value up north of 200. There just is.
And if your business model looks a little bit different, find somebody that you can turn to, maybe do some consulting with to figure out what is this data, so that way you can see where's the gap between where you're at and how much of an opportunity is this for you.
So give me an example, Brooks, of just maybe a different farm to fork business model that would probably have a lower AOV, average order value.
Lower would be, if you were mostly a dairy focused business, that was your flagship product, and you didn't offer a whole lot of upsells outside of that, you would have a significantly lower average order, but because it's dairy, dense
frequency,
dense, low value product. Same thing with produce sometimes. So your product mix is probably going to be the biggest indicator of where your average order value is and where it could be.
Just because
that'll give you your range.
Literally the required frequency of getting produce. Someone's gonna have to get that on a more frequent required basis.
So I think that's the thing, is figure out what's the range that you kind of live in, that obviously takes research, but that tells you what the opportunity would be. And then also you might be listening to this and you might sell pretty much quarters, halves, and wholes. I mean, that's very common. Your average order value is gonna be much higher than Seven Sons. So you have to take this all with a grain of salt, because obviously quarter, halves, and wholes, and if you're trying to build a business around that, there's only so many consumers who are interested in that in your area, so you can quickly reach a level of saturation. So there are times where you might want to make an intentional decision that will bring your average order value way down, but you're compensating that significantly by adding more customers and more orders per year to the equation. So audit your context, and that'll obviously tell you what the opportunity is for you. First kind of strategy that you can turn on to start to make an impact. If you're an e-commerce brand selling online, that's where we're going to focus here today. And Blaine, this one's my favorite because it creates a nice win-win for you and the customer, is a free delivery threshold.
Yeah. Yep.
So what we mean by that is, if you're doing any kind of logistics, whether you're delivering to remote pickup locations, buying clubs, you're using FedEx or UPS for shipping, whatever it is for you, you've got some cost into that logistics. So this is the idea of, if you have a fee in place, you call it a delivery fee, whatever you want to call it, but then you waive that fee after a certain order value is met. So say $150. Ours is set up $150.
$149. Yep.
Yeah, $149. So it's a $12 fee, I think.
I think it's $14 fee.
$14 fee, and then we waive it on orders over $149. So it's free, and you will be shocked on what people will spend in order to get free delivery. And that's what makes this work so well.
Yeah.
If you do the research out there, I know we've done a lot of it in the past. It's been a while since I've looked on it, but it's pretty much accepted standard at this point that this is a huge motivating factor for people to return to an e-commerce business and place an order at the end of the day. So it's a major objection. Nobody wants to pay for a delivery fee. No. It's it's hard for people to translate a delivery fee into value for them. It feels like wasted money when you see. And even though I know it's psychology, and even for me, I mean, I know how all of this works. I know there's no such thing as free delivery, but if I'm on a website and there's a chance to get the delivery fee waived, you better believe that if I'm close to that, I'm gonna maybe add a few items to that cart to get that.
So that's not only a strategy for increasing average order value, Brooks, but it's actually a strategy for acquisition as well. It's a compelling reason to buy when you offer a free delivery at a reasonable threshold.
Yeah, and that's where I think this one, out of, we're going to talk about some other really easy things and maybe even easier things to do, but I think this one's can be the most impactful for someone who's not doing it right now because of that factor where it can add a higher level of conversion rates to the mix as well. So, you might be thinking, Blaine, someone listening to this might be thinking, well, okay,
What are the
sounds
objections?
great. Yeah, sounds great. But, $15 or whatever that delivery fee, that we're doing obviously is not the full picture of our costs when it comes to logistics. So how does someone go about structuring this, especially if someone's in a scenario where they have a couple of different sales channels? I know we've talked about this a couple of times on past episodes. We might refer to it, but if someone's like delivering to buying clubs, or customers can come and order at their farm,
Pick up orders at the
yeah,
farm.
but then they're also doing shipping, which they know, of course, there's the cost to deliver to someone a couple states away is going to be more than it costs to deliver to your local metro at a pickup location. How does someone structure this to where they can still offer a consistent, free delivery threshold?
Well, I mean, for one thing, Gracecart is set up with tools so that you can tailor those fees based on their method of purchase, right? So,
Yeah, I mean that would be, I think that would be step one to look at, is find some software out there that can do this. And I'm not super familiar with this was one of the many reasons that we went to build Gracecart in the first place, was that ability to tailor fees, product selection, and the buying experience for
based on the
different
channels.
Yeah, different options that people are buying from us from. So that would be one thing that you can do. Another thing, if you're currently like charging, I don't know, $40, $50 or so for your shipping fees, we really recommend building that into the price of the product, because we don't look at the fee as necessarily something as a heavy thing that will offset our delivery costs.
No, it costs a lot more than $14 for us to get a box delivered. So
So it's really there as I call it a cart carrot, really. So it's a carrot that's there to incentivize the customer to be able to spend more with you. And if you think about it, even, I know, Blaine, people who are trying to forward all their freight costs onto a delivery fee using like tools like carrier calculated checkout, where, once the customer gets to checkout based on where they live, it pulls in the UPS cost to get it to them.
Right.
And they feel like there's
real-time cost.
Yeah. And sometimes people do that because it's easy to set up. Sometimes people do that because they feel like it feels more genuine, like they're passing the full delivery cost on to the customer. But it's actually not, because a huge scenario of your delivery cost goes into all the packaging and the coolant that goes into the box. And everybody builds that into their pricing model. So I think it's a poor argument to just build in some of it, but not all of it, especially when there's a huge opportunity to just, go to the work of building all of your costs for your customer. And then it gives you the opportunity to now create this, threshold to be able to drive average order value.
Yeah. And also something to think about when you have multiple sales channels is, maybe you have a lower, Gracecart allows you to do this, but maybe you have a lower price for the items that are picked up at the farm. So that you've built in that shipping cost as a standard. So you kind of think about, what do I want to be the standard, way for my customers' purchase? If your standard and your goal is to grow a e-commerce business, home delivery, then need to just think about building that cost of delivery, most of the cost, into the price of the product. The fee for us too, Brooks, if someone wants to place, I don't know, an $85 order, it does really help to have that kind of that minimum handling fee built in to keep the margin steadier on those smaller orders. So it does help out with that. But the main thing is it gives that incentive to get that order value up. Yeah,
another big thing when you look at implementing something like this is if you go to the work to create this cart carrot and free delivery threshold, like I say, it's going to work. You want to make sure that that's visible.
Yeah.
So make sure that you communicate that on the website. I know, Blaine, for a while we had it on the very top of our website in the announcement bar, where you'd maybe make an announcement of something new that's going on. That was just kind of our standard go-to promo messaging. Free delivery on orders over $149 is very common. So make sure that you're doing the work of making sure that your customer's aware of this, because it takes their action in order to get to that threshold.
But on Gracecart, there's a little calculator at the slide out.
Yeah, those are the best. If you can get a little calculator in the cart as they're shopping that shows their progress towards free delivery. And ours, even what we did is we built this to where it'll actually quantify the delivery costs in the cart too. So if it's $20 or whatever it is, they actually see what's the value of that delivery fee that I'm saving.
Yeah, cool.
Final point I'd make on the free delivery threshold is that there's actual economic room to be able to do this as well. Even if you haven't fully thought about your strategy of like building in your shipping costs and stuff, Blaine, because when you do get not only do you increase your average order value, then that increases revenue, but it increases margin as well, because your margin on a $200 order is a lot different than the margin, especially when we're talking in the area of shipping, than the margin on a $75 order. So you've got room, even if you were getting some revenue from your delivery fee of $10, $12, whatever it is, you've got room to give that up on a certain order size, because the margin more than makes up for it. I actually pulled some stats for us. So like the example, Blaine, of trying to ship an order to Ohio. I just pulled this from UPS, but basically it would cost us like $13.81 to ship a 6.5 pound order to Dayton, Ohio.
Yep.
And then it's only $14.36 to ship a 23 pound order to Worcester, Ohio.
Yeah, so
that pretty much the same area, and obviously very little cost difference there. But you've got a lot more margin in that order number 2 than order number 1.
Well, and I've always, and we've recognized too, and we talk to our clients about this, when you're doing pickup locations, your merchandising strategy and the incentive to the customer and to build your business model around a pickup model is you want to fill the truck. That's your goal. That's your economies of scale, is to fill that truck. When you're doing home delivery, you want to structure all of the incentives around filling the box, and the home delivery or the free delivery threshold does just that.
Yep. So this is a super simple one. Literally analyze what all you need to do to get to that free delivery threshold. If you're there, you just got to turn it on. Technology is super easy. If you do use Gracecart, if you use something else, this is starting to become more and more commonplace, and tools that are out there to be able to get a free delivery threshold. If you're on a platform that doesn't allow one, and you've got a decent amount of orders flowing through your system, again, do the math to quantify, hey, if I can increase this by $10, $30, $40.
Don't look at it as I'm just giving this money away.
Yeah, what does that mean to you? And there, that can, obviously be, maybe that one thing can pay for your investment to move to a system that allows for some of these, best practices to get in place. Second thing I wanted to talk about, Blaine, is the order minimum, which I know we don't talk about this a lot because, I don't know, it's, it doesn't fit nearly into, okay, you're doing a benefit for your customer, but I do think it's very important, and it's something that, is easy to overlook because people, don't really want to enforce an order minimum on their
I'm
customer.
amazed at the number of clients, Brooks, that we'll come across that simply have not put an order minimum in place.
Yeah, but, because you look at it as like, oh, I don't want to force my customers to have to buy a certain amount from me. But there's, you got to really think about what does it take to serve a customer. Every single customer that is doing business with you, every single order that you have to pack, there are overheads that go into serving someone. So you got to really think about what does it take to make that work. And, put some sort of minimum out there. And, this can look very different based on your channel. There's different reasons to do it based on your channel.
Different type of product selection.
Yeah, but I think everyone, if you're selling online, should have something in place. So for example, Blaine, like someone who's doing what we're doing, where we're pretty much just doing home delivery and shipping at this point, our order minimum is $75. Mm-hmm. So that's where our threshold has been set. And, we really need it there, because otherwise we start getting orders a whole lot lower than that. Number one, it will significantly impact a margin because of the reasons I just shared before, the delivery cost differences. Yep. But also, it actually gets difficult to ship an order, that's a certain size. So you have someone place a $40 order, that's a 2 filet mignons, maybe something like that.
Exactly. Yep.
So like you can only put so much dry ice in the box to try to keep that thing cold for 2-3 days in transit, and it starts to not work, where we're really losing money on a scenario like that. So there's very practical implications, but I think it's really easy to, if you're not shipping, to think that there's not overheads that you need to account for.
So for example, if someone's picking orders up at the farm.
Yeah, if they're picking up orders at the farm, that's a good scenario. Or if you're, obviously if you're delivering to buying clubs, you still have got some logistics costs into all of that. But yeah, even if just someone who's coming to the farm to pick up an order, they place that order on the website, you've got to go fulfill that order, pack that order. You've got to store the inventory somewhere on the farm, and there's costs in doing all that. And I guarantee you that the cost for you to pack an order that someone bought maybe 10 pounds worth of product is not half as efficient to pack an order that has 20 pounds worth of product.
Yeah.
So you've got less margin in that scenario because it doesn't leverage the overheads nearly as well. So we're going through this just to try to give you some confidence too. If you don't have a minimum that's in place, this is going to be something that's scary sometimes, but definitely get one in place. And you can actually, through Gracecart, if you are using the software, customize your minimum appropriately to the channel. So if you're doing pickup locations or pre-orders at the farm, but then you're also doing shipping, you can make it $75 for shipping, make it $30 for pre-order for pickup at the farm, and that can be more appropriate. The big thing I think is wherever your order minimum is today, or if you don't have one in place, just make that minimum, a little bit below what maybe your average order value is, and it's gonna end up boosting what that average order value results is once you look at it on a 12-month period.
Yeah, so it can boost margin and revenue just because of the efficiencies of those larger orders you'll get with that minimum. And I'd say, Brooks, if someone doesn't have a minimum, what are some things, I guess, to think about when they go to roll that out? I mean, you just mentioned is look at your average order size currently, so be a little bit below that. But another thing would be, honestly, just communicating transparently with your customers as to why this is actually something that's needed and how it could benefit them. And
that's where it's worth, just digging into your cost to where you can kind of have that level of confidence into, it is more expensive to serve a customer who's only buying $10, $20 from you every single month versus someone who's spending $150. That's a big difference.
And if you're doing home delivery, you want to let customers know, hey, it's important to us that this order, it gets delivered to you frozen and in good condition. If the order gets too small, we just can't guarantee that any longer.
There's a quality life aspect to this too. I think the 80-20 principle really applies here. Would you rather, I wrote down some stats here. It's like Blaine, would you rather operate a $1 million business that serves 2,000 customers a year, or would you rather operate $1 million business that serves 1,000 customers a year?
Yeah, 1,000 customers every time. I mean, every order, Brooks, carries with it a certain ratio of support emails and phone calls that are going to come in. Possible problems that could happen during transit of shipping, all kinds of things.
So you can only push this one so far, and there's an appropriate place where this needs to be set. The big thing is if you don't have it right now, get something in place, because when you do it, your business will grow.
Yep. What else, Brooks, do we have as strategies? I mean, those first two were more like just turn it on and it'll start increasing revenue.
Yeah, some other ones that take a little bit more work, but we still have a high degree of confidence will translate to impact and value for you, would be upsells, like quantity upsells on buying a certain number of products. So like if, say, what we do on our website, if you go to sevensons.net, you go to ground beef, someone can buy, a la carte from us, individual cuts, whatever amount that they want. But we give them upsell incentives to do a quantity of 4. Is it 4 or 5?
I think it's 4-pack is most common.
4-pack is what we do, and then you get an incentive to basically buy that. So the way it works for us too is it's like an add to cart upsell. So the minute that they go to add it to their cart, it says select option, and it gives them the drop down where they can see what's the price to buy 1, here's the price to buy 4, here's the price to buy 8, however deep you want to build out these incentives for. So, and the visibility that this creates, basically every single time someone goes to add an item to their cart, we're basically very subtly prompting them with the question, would you like 4?
Yep.
Would you like 8? Mm-hmm. Here's the incentive to be able to do that. And the conversion rates on the people that would normally wouldn't have got 4, that we're going to buy maybe 2 or 3 that go to 4, that conversion rate is never going to be 0. It's always going to be something. So this is almost something that I would argue has pretty much guaranteed impact that it will have for your business. Obviously, you have to look at, okay, well, what kind of margin can you afford to give a price break and discount? But this is when you're having those conversations, you're re-auditing your pricing and your merchandising structure. This is definitely something that's a no-brainer to put in place.
And it will drive average order value up. And it can also reduce some of the complexity of fulfillment, Brooks, because you're ultimately incentivizing the customer to buy some items in bulk. So you may have less ones and twosies all over the order, taking you all over the freezer to fill that order.
Yeah, I think about our picking days when we had all of our slots just laid out for 100 or 150, 200 products. We have a bunch of different slots inside the freezer. Yeah. When you go to grab the ground beef, it takes just as much time to head to that corner where the ground beef is to grab 1 as it would basically to grab 4. So grab 4 from there, 4 from here is a lot easier than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. So there's efficiency that you will get on the fulfillment side from this as well. Kind of the last strategies we wanted to talk about were more long-term strategies, and they really have to relate with your overall product selection and merchandising. If some very simple ones, if you're listening to this and you really sell only one core selection of products, so say poultry, you raise and pasture raised poultry and you're selling that online, you really need to think about, as customers, you're starting to get some customers, boy, if you gave them pork to buy on that website as well, if you gave them beef to buy on that website, your conversion rates are not going to be 0, and it's going to be a big benefit for them because now they can kind of go to one place to get a quality source of pasture-raised, grass-fed meat products. So this just goes back, and I think our very first interview we ever did on the podcast was with Johnny Woods talking about producer partnerships and how you can structure those. But you definitely want to, if you're not planning to raise a product like that, you need to consider buying it wholesale from somebody who does, that you can help tell their story give that option to your customers. So there's work that goes into that. But I mean, in the early days, those are some of the easiest things that can really make a huge impact to your overall average order value.
Yeah, and one objection to that, Brooks, is I hear that I want my customers to reserve their money to buy the things that I produce that maybe I have a little bit better margin on. But it's important that you actually do the math, run a spreadsheet, and figure out what is your margin if they just added a couple pounds of an item that you don't produce. Maybe you have a lower margin at that, but look at your overall margin on the order. Think holistically about it.
Yeah, some of these things kind of play against each other, but especially if I think in the scenario of where you're shipping, we just talked about how it was only $1 and some cents more to ship a 26-pound order versus a 6-pound order a state away for us. If you can get a few more items to that box, even if they have
a little lower margin.
Yeah, you're spreading out your shipping costs, those input costs that goes into serving every single order, serving every single customer.
Yep.
Another big thing when it comes to selection, Blaine, I know that we were talking about before we started was bundles, and I know this was kind of a big deal for us, and it's a big area that drove average order value. Like if we remove the bundles that are on our website, we would definitely see a major dip in average order value. So talk about some of the bundles selections that we have on the site.
Yeah, so we have like some kind of procured bundles that are lower cost. So we have like a set of best of collection, Brooks, which I think it's $189 is where we price those bundles. So we know that those are very popular. But then we have bundles that go all the way up to the eighth of a beef, the quarter of a pork, and a quarter hog, and we know that those definitely, if we took all those away, Brooks, I'm convinced we would have a lower average order value. Now we do give a discount for those items, so that's back to what you're saying. Some of these things can kind of play against each other, but overall, I believe that we're better off offering those bundles and getting that average order value up because mainly we are, Brooks, 99% of all of our orders are shipped to someone's home. So that average order size, getting that up with those bundles, we think is worth it from the margin of the entire order. Yeah,
at the end of the day, pretty much almost everything we mentioned here, except for the order minimum, you sacrifice a level of margin for, but it's for the ability to further leverage your overhead. So if you sacrifice a little bit of margin on your input cost, but you think it's going to leverage your overheads a lot further, that's a fair trade to make. And as long as you're staying competitive from a pricing standpoint for, the large industry players that are out there, which most people aren't, you've got room to be able to make some of these changes and structure this order that's going to get you the highest possible dollar value, because that's what's going to make you leverage and get the most amount of margin as possible from each order.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to state this is, don't get lost in the shades of gray. Oh, if I offered a bulk discount, then it's going to lower my margin here. What you want to look at, Brooks, is figuring at the end of the day, what is the margin on the boxes that leave my farm?
Yep.
And we're always, when we price our best of bundles, Brooks, or when we price our eighth of a beef each year, or the different times a year that we're looking at that, we look at cost out the door, basically delivered to the customer. We're not looking at just the margin on the product itself. It's just one aspect of it. We are always looking at final landed delivery margin.
Yeah. So it's like an economic scenario where you plan these different scenarios we're talking about of like, well, what if my delivery fee was this? What if the order minimum was that? Yeah. And you can kind of see what's that landed cost going to be to get it delivered to the customer. So these are the main things we want to talk about. Obviously, some of them are simple that you can press play on now. I mean, my favorite overall structure when I'm talking to someone about increasing average order value, if they're brand new to this, make sure you have a minimum that's appropriate for your channel, your product selection. Make sure you have a free delivery threshold that's in there, and do the work of planning your delivery fees into that cost of the product. And then make sure you're doing some smart things on the website to have some bundle upsells that with the product selection that they can add to the cart. And that structure right there, the numbers of where those need to be will be a little bit different for everybody. But if you get those three things in place, it's going to have a significant impact on average order value.
Yeah.
Cool. So resources to get started, next steps. We'll leave some links for those of you GrazeCart clients who are listening to documentation on GrazeCart for how to turn on your free delivery calculator and that free delivery threshold, order minimums, everything that we talked about on here. And if you guys like the episode, go to foodchainwars.com. Be sure to subscribe if you're new and leave us a review. If you've been around for a while, you've been getting value from some of the stuff that we're talking about. If you have an idea for the next topic or a question that you think we could answer that would make a good episode, be sure to leave us a voicemail on that website. That's a cool little feature. You can just ask a question, leave it right there. That'll come to Blaine and I, and we might build that around a future episode. So really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys soon.